This week, we're talking about the subscription coffee for the month of May and giving you an exclusive sneak peek at the glass April Brewer. Welcome, my name is Patrick Rolfe and this is Coffee with April. For this episode, we are gonna talk about the subscription coffee for the month of May. And for this one, we're choosing something we haven't featured in quite some time for our subscribers. It's a Brazilian coffee, more specifically coming from farmer Bruno and his family at the Esperança farm outside of Belo Horizonte in Minas Gerais. Now, we've been working with Bruno for quite some time here at April, and we visited the farm several times. And we've been super excited to feature this specific coffee as we believe that it gives you a slightly different take on this traditional kind of Brazilian profile. It goes without saying today that the Brazilian coffee in general in the industry is not something that we link together with the highest quality coffee. And we think that's a shame. We think there's some coffees you can find that are actually really, really tasty. And this is a good example of that. Now, a bit more specific about the coffee. At Bruno's farms, it grows up on 1,200 meters above sea level. It's actually what we refer to as a ruby varietal, which is a hybrid created in the 60s from Mundo Novo in Catuai. Now, on its own, this coffee is very kind of sweet, fruity, well-balanced, but also this kind of floral undertone. And what makes this coffee even more interesting is that Bruno here, specifically for us, have actually singled out all of the pea berry screens with this coffee. So this is a 100% pea berry selection of a Brazilian coffee, something that we often don't find. Now, the reason for not finding more pea berries around the world, we know that, for example, in Kenya, it's something we've seen for quite some time. It's the fact that it falls into the smaller screen sizes. And in larger productions or in very automated productions, usually those are just sorted in with everything else in terms of small screen sizes. But as we all know by now, pea berries sometimes feature some really interesting characteristic flavors that we don't find in other sortings of the coffee. And I think that this one is a good example because it's similar to the Kenyan coffee where it becomes a bit more floral, a bit more acidic, and a bit more vibrant. So that's why we think this coffee is really interesting and we're really excited to share that with you. Now, in terms of roasting, what we've done here is that we're stretching out the roast a bit longer after first crack than what we normally do. We're up at 1 minute and 10 seconds with a total roast times of 10 minutes and 16 seconds. Keeping the end temperature relatively low for us, so that's at 207.2. Now, Brazilian coffees in general, we believe needs a tiny bit more time after crack, just because it takes more time for them to pick up colors. So if we would roast these as fast after crack as we do some of our other coffees, they'll simply just be too light. And if you go on a Brazilian coffee that is too light, just end up with this really kind of raw nut kind of flavors, which we try to avoid here at April. So instead we're stretching it out, which means it becomes really sweet. One of the interesting things with this coffee that we haven't found in most other Brazilian coffees is this kind of blackberry, blueberry vibe tone to it, which we think is really interesting. It kind of helps we pronounce the fact that it is a natural processed coffee as well, which just makes it a tiny bit more sweet, but without any of that funk. Like, as you know, we've seen a lot more funk descriptions in terms of taste in general when it comes to coffee, and that's something that we are actively not very interested in here at April. And this is a sweet coffee, but it's also a very clean coffee. And together with this blackberry notes, you kind of have a bit of high quality, positive nutty notes. I think that often when we talk about nutty notes in coffee, they usually fall into a kind of a negative character, but there's a lot of different flavors when it comes to different styles of nuts, and that's interesting to kind of reflect upon here when it comes to different tastes in this coffee as well. Now, finally, when it comes to brewing, we have something quite exciting for you guys. We have the final version of the April Glass Brewer. Now, those of you that followed us know that we created a ceramic version of this for the World Brewers Cup a few years back. And since that, we've been thinking about how can we progress and make this a tiny bit better and improve it. And the result has been a glass version. We have a few other versions coming, but more about that in another video. Now, when it comes to brewing, we're using a pretty standard approach in terms of how we brew coffee here at April. The water sits at 94 degrees Celsius. We're dosing 13 grams of coffee. Referencing on a Comandante, we're around 26 clicks. And we're gonna do our classic 2-pour, where we do 2 identical pours, being 30 grams in a circle and 70 grams in a center. And we're pouring all of that water within 10 seconds. Now, after that, we're gonna let the coffee sit for 30 seconds in total, and then we're doing our second pour, aiming for a total brew time about 240. Now, what's interesting with the glass brewer here, because we've done a few changes / improvements, it was not about necessarily thinking that we can't make tasty enough coffee on the ceramic, because we can. It was more about thinking, okay, how can we make this slightly different, get the same quality out of it and still bring something new to the table. So what we've done here is that we slightly changed the angles on the walls of the brewer. We're also changing the base of the brewer, where 1, to make sure that it doesn't break, 2, to make sure that we still have the benefits of the air pockets that we're featuring on the base of the brewer. So we're super excited to kind of bring you guys something new. And all in all, this is a really interesting coffee, and it's kind of us also saying that we should take Brazilian coffee seriously, not just as one of the largest producers in the world, but remembering that there's a lot of small producers that do really a great job, and not all of them are taking the kind of funky modern roads, which perhaps isn't the tastiest coffee. Some of them, like Bruno at Esperança, is kind of sticking to their qualities, featuring some really flavor expressive, clean, well-balanced coffees that are also extremely well processed and aging very, very well. So with that, we want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. It means a lot. Special thanks to all the Patreons that support us and allows us to up our game when it comes to the videos as well. We're super excited to send this coffee out to you. And we're looking forward to hear back from you. What is your thoughts about this coffee? What is your thoughts on Brazilian coffees in general? What are the best coffees you tried from that origin in the past? With that, we want to say thank you for watching. As always, we really appreciate it. Have a good day. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.